go to the plot, which we've kind of talked about already. I'm going to do this over here. Plot. Your characters have to have something to do. And I kind of put this, and this is, you're especially when you're doing an OC, your OC has to have a reason for being in the story. People hate characters who are useless. They can be any personality they want, but if they have no reason to be in the story, if you can take out the character and your story is exactly the same, you shouldn't put them in there. And if they're completely useless, you shouldn't put them in there. People will hate them, no matter who they are, what they did, well, I guess what they didn't do, because they're useless. That's all I hear about the new Transformers movie. People hate the new underwear model because she does nothing in the movie, which is true. Let's see. So a plot, and everybody knows what a plot is, but I actually underlined this in my notes. Romance alone is not a plot. And a lot of people do this when they do Mary Sue's. Mary Sue shows up, guy falls in love, and they just kind of have lovey-dovey time, and that's the plot. Yeah.
Plot needs to have a conflict, resolution, climax,
Yep.
action, and resolution.
Yep.
Or worst dilemmas, it's just set.
Yep.
So
Okay.
who cares?
But I could actually do like an entire panel about romance, but I'm going to sum
This
it up in
panel
a.
should be like 2 hours long.
I know.
Hey,
I know.
Rachel.
I went through it last. I had, I think, double people last year, and nobody asked me any questions. So you guys are kind of awesome. Let me finish with the romance, and then I'll get to your question. Unless, is it related to romance?
It's related to the romance.
Let's do some romance. You talk while I write on the board.
I sometimes look for fanfics, and sometimes all you see is romance, and when you read these romance fics, it's just pure fluff.
They get boring. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with fluff, but they have to have something else to do, or it gets boring, because we don't want to just see them make out all day. There's, I mean, that's more just like gratuitous writing for the author, because they pretty much think they're that character when it's nothing but make out time. But like I said, I'm going to sum up all good romance stories in a math problem, because I'm a geek. And I call it the his and hers postulate. Is anybody familiar with his and hers circumstances?
Mm-hmm.
That show is nothing but, it's all about the relationship. They get together in volume 1, and it's like 22 volumes, and it's amazing. It's a great story. And this is what this manga taught me. Character A loves character B, but. And then we got character B loves character A, but. And this is the reason why Twilight is so popular, even though it's written poorly. Okay? Because everybody agrees, mostly, that Twilight's not the best written book ever, yet it's very popular. Because it follows this equation.
And it's escapist.
Character A loves character B, but he's a vampire. Character B loves character A, but she's his food. That is an interesting idea. So your plot, if you want to do a romance, which you can, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you can have action, adventure, and romance in it. You have to remember the character's circumstances. And ask yourself this: girl loves boy, but, and the boy loves girl. And it's a two-sided thing. Is anybody familiar with Karikano? It's not the...
Yeah.
So, and that's pretty much what the whole thing's about. Yukino loves Arima, but, her circumstances, and he loves her, but his circumstances. And they're very interesting. And the entire 22 volumes is about how they deal with their circumstances, and it's interesting. And it's like, I couldn't tell you the plot, because it's really hard to just put on paper and say this is my plot, but oh my gosh, it's amazing, so much fun. And so we're gonna run right into relationships. Ships, it's spelled something like this. Okay.
Just put shipping, it's probably easier.
Yeah.
Shipping,
Yeah.
just put
Shipping, that's a good word for it. But we're not just talking romantic relationships here. We're talking all relationships. This is, aside from the drive, this is the other way you get people to fall in love with your character. People love relationships. It is the meat of the story. It is the thing that is the most important to your readers. Does so-and-so get together with so-and-so? Does this brother get together with this brother? Or do they continue to hash it out for all time? Father and son, whatever.
Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Yes.
All about relationships. There's so many going through that. That family had a hard time.
Yeah.
So, all of them. You have to, and people focus on just the romance. And they forget the other relationships. Back to his and her circumstances. My absolute favorite relationship is between Yukino and our Asaba, which is her boyfriend's best friend. They hate each other when they meet each other. They were like throwing food at each other and like tripping each other in the hall. And I think like Yukino threw her shoe at him, and it was hilarious. And then like after they like kind of made up, and it took them a while. They hated each other for a while. Then they were kind of like super tight and like best buds, and they were like partners in crime. That was my favorite relationship in the story, and it had nothing. She was never interested in him, and he was never interested in her. But it really drew me into the story, and it was my favorite relationship. And you knew, so like when Yukino's running around, you knew when Asaba popped up, it was going to be interesting. You're like, oh, what are they going to be up to next? So don't forget this. And I do actually have a relationship chart, which everybody needs to remember. So let's say we have Mary Sue here. And Mary Sue has her boyfriend, which is your favorite canon character, because that's how that works. Favorite canon character has 3 buddies that are also canon characters. So, of course, this is the main relationship everybody thinks about. And that's all they think about. But anybody who's ever had a significant other knows that if you date someone, you are dating their best friends. So girlfriend has to have a relationship with him, and with him. And they don't have to be best buddies. Maybe she hates one of them, maybe 2 are indifferent. That's fine. But they all have to have some kind of relationship with each other. And likewise, boyfriend has to have relationship with this buddy, and with this buddy. One of them's going to be his go-to guy. One's going to be like his, you have different friends and they all have different relationships. And then likewise, so-and-so has a relationship with him, so-and-so has a relationship with him. And then if she also has a friend, if they meet, anybody they meet has a relationship. And you have to keep that in mind. Yeah. It's hard, and and they're all different. Some of them are not important whatsoever. There's people in your lives that you're indifferent about, and they're not worth noting. So, but you can really make some interesting stuff. Once again, back to Karikano. If you have not read the manga, I highly suggest everybody read this manga. It will tell you so much about storytelling. Because this is Karikano, except for there's Yukino, there's her best friend, there's her group of buddies, and then there's Arima and his friend, and then there's like the new kid that moves in, and then these other girls that come in, and they all have relationships with each other. And it's amazing. Like that's how this went on for 22 volumes. And it's so much fun to read. I really love it. It's also okay to have a character hate Mary Sue. Oh, crap, 5 minutes? I haven't even gotten to villains.
There's actually 15. They give you that
Did they say
warning,
15?
but there's actually
Okay.
15.
Okay. So it's also okay to have a canon character hate your Mary Sue or your original character. Just because the canon characters hate her doesn't mean I'm going to hate her. Sometimes I think that's funny.
One of my favorite things to do, create an OC. My favorite character has hate. And the readers find it a lot more interesting if you make it quite obvious that the character that hates your character is your favorite. And then they realize maybe this person isn't going to dote on their character so much.
Okay, since we don't have a whole lot of time and I would like to answer more of your questions so we can talk about what you guys want to talk about, I'm just going to skip this really quick. So the next thing on my list was character growth, which we have talked about. I absolutely hate when I go through an entire story, reading, anime, anything, then the characters are exactly the same. I just watched Scrap Princess. That's exactly how Scrap Princess ends. Like, people die. They go through horrific things, and then they buy a cabin, and they're just like, yay, nothing really happened, la 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 la.
That's the big reason why you hate Macross 7.
It's awful. Your character should grow. I don't see the reason in writing a story if your character does not change at the end. Mm-hmm. Like I said, yeah, so let them grow, let them change, let them learn, let them get their wish, let them not get their wish, and see what happens. Then consistency, we talk about. Conclusion. We just talked about the ending has to be good. It really will make or break a story. I know it has nothing to do with the character, but if you crap out at the end, I have some shows and some characters that I really enjoyed till the end. Japan makes horrible endings. Not always, but a lot.
I like how Doraemon is still like not technically over.
Yeah, and honestly, when I go through my anime collection, that's how I decide what I keep and what I get rid of. The ones with the good endings I keep. The ones with the bad endings I will sell. So, I don't know. How are we doing now? Okay, so yeah, make sure your ending is worth it. I highly suggest when you start a story, you know at least somehow how it's going to end before you start it, just so you know where you're going. Otherwise, it's like getting in your car and just starting to drive. You don't know where you're going. Okay, really quick, I'm going to go through villains. Because villains can be original characters too, and if you make an original story, you have to have a villain or an antagonist. So, once again, you have to make a bio. You have to have a background. Usually their background and their personality are the reason that they're a villain. And villains also have the drive, but we always call it a motive. Why are they doing what they're doing? And it needs to be solid. And I always say this to everybody, and it's kind of a scary thought to a lot of people, even your canon villains. I always ask, because villains are hard to get into their heads sometimes. Some people have a really hard time writing villains. Some people have a really easy time. But I always ask them, what exactly would the villain do if they got what they wanted? Because the villain is prepared to go all the way. The writer usually isn't, which is why there's happy endings. But you need to understand what they want and what they're willing to do to get it. And some people can't do it, but I tell people, just think in your head, okay, what if the villain won? What exactly is he going to do? You know, who's he going to kill, da-da-da-da-da. And I try not to make it cliche, because what is it? Like if it's an action-adventure, they're trying to take over the world, or they're trying to get the girl, or whatever, but what would they do before the hero, if the hero doesn't come in time? And it just helps you get into the villain's mind, so you understand, like I said, what they're willing to do and how they're willing to get it. Let's see. Getting to the reality. Sometimes the villain, if you want to make them scary, sometimes they don't live in the same reality. Like, they can break rules that the hero can't, and it makes them scarier. Depending on what kind of villain you want. I've seen shows. One of my favorite animated shows, the villain's kind of a pushover, and that's the comedy in it. You know, there's lots of shows like that, which is fine. Villains also have relationships, and sometimes that makes the villain, we'll say, more likable. You know, sometimes they have like their what do villains have?
Dr. Horrible, right?
Dr. Horrible. He's like, does he have like roommates and stuff like that? And actually, with villains, my favorite relationship with a villain is what his relationship is to the hero. And sometimes they don't meet till the end, but what does the villain think about the hero? does he think the hero's even a threat? Are they evenly matched? Are they? I do like the arch nemesis sometimes. I like seeing the villain kind of like. I like Transformers, with Megatron, and he's like, "I'll get you, Optimus Prime," and they've been fighting for like 5 million years, and they constantly just sit in their rooms alone, and they're like, "How am I gonna get the best of him?" And it's kind of fun. So I really like knowing what the villain thinks of the hero, and how that makes them feel, because sometimes the villain doesn't give a crap about the hero, and they don't think the hero's strong enough to stop them and whatnot. Let's see. And of course the introduction. Conclusion. And this kind of goes back to this when I said think about what the villain's willing to do. But in the conclusion, whatever you portrayed the villain to be, you have to be prepared to pretty much the villain has to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So if you want to make a super uber bad guy and you're kind of a squeamish writer, maybe you should rethink your villain if you can't follow through what the villain promises. Because people can tell. And anime also does it a lot. They do the villain cop-out, where the villains are either suddenly good at the end, or like Fushigi Yugi, when they killed Nakago, and he's like, no, I had this horrible childhood, and all these things happened to me, and there's like, wah, I feel bad for me, and you're like, no, you're a bastard, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Don't do the villain cop-out.